Hi, this is Gary Simonelli with G-ROC Recording. Today I'm going to talk about the GT-1000 and its global EQs. I'm also going to touch base a little bit on some compressors and how I use them in my signal chain, and maybe also when and when not to use them. And this video is sponsored by viewer comments. So let's get going. Here we are, we're in the Tone Studio, and I just want to make a little disclaimer. I'm going to the menu, you can see that right here, and go down to version, and I'm running this current version, which is 3.0.3 as of September 25th, 2019. There could be an update, I don't know, I haven't checked. But anyway, while we're in this page, I want you to see some of the global settings. So the input setting here, you can either boost or cut whatever kind of signal you have going into the unit. And then the output settings, here you would set a global EQ for the two sets of outputs. The main outs, those are the 2 1/4-inch jacks just behind the expression pedal. There's an EQ for that. You can actually split them up. So if you're running it stereo or you have different cabinets going out on each channel, you could actually have 2 settings for each one. Whatever your little heart desires, you could do it there. The sub outs, another output, these are the XLRs. You could also have the same thing. You can unlink these and have 2 different EQ settings on each channel. That could come in handy if maybe say have EQ one side a little different than the other, especially when you're running in stereo, just gives it a different sound. So that's where you would do any kind of global EQing. It's parametric EQ, by the way. So it might be a little confusing at first, but you know, this is flat, just meaning that there's no cut or anything. So the low cut would be, if I was going to do anything, I'd probably cut it about that much. It wouldn't be that noticeable in the low end. It would clean it up a little bit. You probably have like a lot of rumble. A lot of players want to play with a lot of low end on their guitar. And sometimes it's just, I mean, it might sound cool, but it really isn't, because it just muddies everything up, especially if you have a singer and you're trying to get a vocal above everything in some smoky club, and the guitar player is just being way too over the top with the low end. It just makes it muddy. It's not cool. But I leave it flat. Same with the mains. Leave it flat. Everything is all default, so I don't do anything for that. Now, I guess this would come in handy if you're using different amps at different times. I don't know. If you have to rent an amp, maybe you could set a global EQ instead of doing it in your patches, just for that particular thing, and then you could quickly switch it back. That would be a great thing to use this for. Otherwise, I don't use it. As you can see, it's flat. So I run stereo to a mixing board and then to the front of house. And then the sub, actually the main is what I run to my monitor. I have a powered wedge that I use for my onstage monitor or speaker cabinet. And the sub outs are going to the console. So that's that. So let's go back to this. So here I have an EQ in the front of my chain, which I do any kind of corrective EQing going into the front of the amp, which actually cleans it up. It helps get like a tighter sound on your low end, because sometimes if you push the front of an amp a little too hard with a lot of low end, it just kind of makes it a little muddy. it's just been a practice of mine lately, especially with modeling stuff, to put an EQ in the front of your chain, because you just hit those preamps, those virtual preamps, and it sometimes can do some quirky, weird things. So anyway, with that being said, here's the settings for that. So I chop off a bunch of low end, anywhere from 20 to 80, as you can see here. I'm scooping out a little 10 dB in my low mids, and here I'm cutting a little bit of high end, because sometimes these things can sound a little fizzy, especially with that top end. And with I have a couple of Wolfgangs that sound a bit, they could be a little bit harsh. So that's where I make my cuts. And then you can see here, in here you can see the global settings, and here's, everything's run flat. Same thing here. The main outs, everything's flat. So you could change it here. That's your global setting. So how I use a compressor. So how I use a compressor. So this is my setup here. I have two different amps. Well, I don't have two different. Let me rephrase that. I have both the same amps with different settings. I have one set up for my lead. This is my lead tone, or my lead rhythm. Here's my boost. And then here's my clean channel, which is actually the same amp with just some different settings in regards to, less gain, a little bit cleaner sounding. So that's how I have that set up. Now, on my lead and my rhythm, I don't use a compressor, because you're compressing the bejesus out of the, using a bunch of overdrive. You don't need compression on that. I mean, you could, I guess, if you really wanted to, but you really don't need to. So on the cleaner amp, so I'm using the X comp. With a high compression ratio, 8:1. The level was around 39, 40. I got fairly fast attack, and the sustain is kind of a threshold, maybe release. I'm not really sure. I don't know the exact specs on it. I just know what it sounds like when it reacts to the different. See, that sounds about right to me. It's not breathing. Now if I turn it off, you kind of can use it as a kind of a shaping tool. You can really do some things with the different kind of attacks. I kind of like a faster attack, like I had it around 16. Now you can really hear, as I'm going to crank up the sustain, and basically what it's doing is definitely going to go over the threshold, whatever that is set at. I don't know what it is, but when you hit it, you're going to hear some breathing, and you'll understand what that means. Now, if you can hear that, it's kind of it's chopping off the transient, which is like the first hit, and it kind of sinks a little bit, and then you hear it slowly rising in volume. It's filling it. What it's doing, it's reached the threshold, and now it's starting to go back, and now that volume's going to come back up. But there's a ton of tutorials on how a compressor works and the mindset of it. This kind of stuff is more, that's why they don't give you all the controls, because it's simpler. You don't have to think about it. That's why they call it the sustain knob. So it does, these are actually doing probably two things to, instead of having two different knobs doing the same thing. So if we crank this all the way up, you're really going to hear, you're almost getting into distortion, because what it's doing, it's bringing every noise from the guitar up to level. So if you just, you can hear the additional noise along with it. So that's one way not to set your compressor. Now that's why I have this as more transparent, I would say. Now the ratio, a lot of compressors for guitar typically don't have a ratio, but this one does, so this one's pretty cool. So if I bring this down, here, this is 1:1, that's basically no compression whatsoever. So it's not reacting whatsoever, because the ratio's 1:1. So if I start bringing this up, so here's 2:1. It's subtle, but it's there. Now if I bring this up, I had it 8:1. You're really going to hear a difference. Now if I bring it up even higher, it's getting into like limiter kind of here, infinity. Bring that up a little bit. Now the attack Now, if you don't want it to chop off your transient so much, you can give it a little bit slower attack, and this will tell it, like, you can almost get your transient in there, your initial hit or attack, before it pulls it down. Here, I'll make it a little bit more dramatic. So. Now that's kind of what they call pumping, and because what's happening is you're getting the initial attack, but then you can also almost hear it pull it down a bit and then slowly come back up again. Here, let me do the sustain a little bit more so it really does something here. So that's not how I would set it. That would be the absolute wrong way. But, I mean, maybe that's the sound you're looking for. Maybe that's perfect. Maybe that's exactly why you came to watch this video. So I keep it a little bit faster, around 16. This a little bit less. Now, I try to also balance the levels between the heavier. Sometimes a cleaner guitar can almost be louder. I've seen this happen a lot of times with guitar players. They'll make their guitar, their clean sound cuts through better than their dirty sound. So they don't really do like a volume matches on it on their patches. So see, on this I would make it this probably a little bit less. Let's see. Okay, that concludes my video on the GT-1000 and the global EQ and compressors. I hope that was informative. I hope it helped you out a little bit. Maybe if you're trying to think of a way to set a compressor for your guitar or something on those lines, I hope it helped. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. I will answer as soon as I possibly can. And or make another video or fix this one, but keep on rocking, and if you need any more help with this stuff, let me know. I'll be glad to do it. So you guys have a good week. I will be talking to you very soon. Thanks.